Hello and welcome to DotNet&More podcast. And you can ask us a question. Why I'm talking in English with my awful accent? Just because we have special release with a special guest. Guys, tell me, who are you?
Hi, I'm Stuart. I've come over to St. Petersburg today to give a presentation about data and analytics within Газпром, Germany.
Yeah, Газпром, Germany.
Evening, I'm Chris Ryder, and I too work for Газпром, marketing and trading, and we have just done a .NET meetup, and I've done a session looking at near-silent trading.
Thank you. I'm Sasha. And I just want to ask some questions, and the more important question is, you use .NET in your data analytic, data transferring, trading, and why do you use .NET, not Java?
Ooh, good question.
Fantastic question.
I do know Java's about to get very expensive.
I was about to. I suppose to point out one of the obvious reasons right now is Java has gone from being an open source language to now charging ever since Java 8, and this presents a problem for businesses. There's so much of a cost in the license. Why would I want to use Java? So that's one thing. The second thing is that a lot of enhancements have really come into the fray for .NET. And .NET's actually expanded more into not just the language, but how many business applications it can solve problems for. The resource pool of .NET developers versus Java is much bigger. Financial line of business applications are .NET. There's probably not one real answer, but I think there's many factors that build up to making that decision of .NET over Java.
Yeah, and in addition to that, when people are starting out in their careers, they have opportunities to learn different languages, and some languages are used more in business than other languages, and Java certainly has its place within various industries, within various avenues, but for us, we are a .NET shop, and it's a tool that works for us, and it really does, and it's supported by Microsoft. It's ever evolving. The documentation, there used to be MSDN and then Docs, and I'm not sure whatever it's branded nowadays, but the documentation around .NET is very, very helpful, and it always helps somebody to pick up and get going. And I think that's one of the key things as well.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah, thank you. To be honest, that wasn't a true question. I just wanted to, endorse you. And you mentioned that you use data analysts, some data analysis tasks, some transferring decision-making tasks. And I've noticed that at this moment there are a lot of extremely new things from Microsoft. ML.NET or ML.NET. What do you think about ML.NET?
Yeah, so I think it's definitely, if you look at it from the understanding of the technology itself and where Microsoft's going with it, they realise the potential of machine learning, and
there'll be a slight pause because we're sorting out the beer.
But yeah, no, I think libraries like ML.NET really make a difference these days, because you can tell where Microsoft's going, you can tell where the big vendors are going, and they really see that machine learning is something that has changed the market, in the sense of people used to program and solve these problems, and we've got too much data. We don't have enough time to process it.
And what about cognitive services and some Azure things that are supported by Microsoft and provided some APIs that are easy to use from .NET environments?
Yeah, so I guess for me, I think that's a really good point you raise, and that point is that with these APIs, a developer can just pick up a method called get the data they want back out in a very simple way without having to understand the underlying technology as much. And I think services like that are fantastic, especially in businesses. That's where you get the value.
Okay.
I think it's worth mentioning that the platform Microsoft are offering brings it to the masses, really. Individuals or small companies can't achieve what Microsoft and others, Google, have done. They've made machine learning accessible via the cognitive services and the other APIs, Project Oxford APIs. They have spent millions, if not billions, of pounds, dollars, rubles developing those libraries. And it's fantastic, to be honest. Different people are finding different applications for them. And it's just a matter of time. And I think it's also, you don't necessarily have to use them. Why not? Because you use the right tool for the right job. And you don't necessarily need to use a cognitive service all the time for something. It doesn't. You don't necessarily need that complexity or the cost.
Yeah, and that I just have one interesting question about ML.NET. Microsoft provide a good CLI tool for ML.NET with AutoML. Then you just prepare data, send it to this tool, and go drinking beer or tea or something like that. And as a result, you will get a trained model that can be quite well. So it doesn't mean that we should throw out all ML specialists and use AutoML.
Well, I mean, we both got ML kind of experts in our teams, right? And I would agree.
Yeah, I think my guys are more using TensorFlow and things.
There's a lot of TensorFlow.
We're not on the .NET ML.
No, that's fair enough. I mean, yeah, I suppose, I think we're not there yet, but I think it's definitely a sign that things are changing now because, we talked about AutoML before, and, if I just want to get a piece of data, throw it at a tool and it processes it for me and, works out the algorithm, fantastic, job done. The difficulty is the people. And how do you not only get that result, but how do you then put it back to the business to make it valuable? How do you make it valuable to you? And that's the bit I think they haven't solved, and that's why I still think we're in that middle ground. We're making progress, but I think there's a lot more that's going to come to that particular area. At least that's what I think.
Yeah, I agree. There's the human interpretation as well, human application of those libraries and those models, really. And you need to, in a trading environment, you would never just rely on a single model, single signal. You need to have confidence in what it's doing.
Yeah.
And what do you think? Maybe AutoML can allow some just only business specialist guys who are extremely well known. That guys who are experienced is with the business experts, without mathematical knowledge, without mathematical experience. So what do you think? Maybe AutoML will allow these guys generating models without incorporating not only ML engineers but programists, just AutoML and business experts.
Okay, so this is a fantastic thing. What we're learning now, or what we're seeing now in the marketplace, and I touched on it just a bit of time before, in the business place, is that people are no longer trying to look for developers to solve their programmatic problems in the sense of not knowing the technical stuff and not being able to tell the developer, and the developer is this expert that knows everything and knows how to solve it. That's all changed now. So now the difference is that the business says, well, I don't want to have a developer involved. I'll go to my AutoML and I will be able to get this information easily. And we've got 2 or 3 projects, as I mentioned before, that we are doing this. We're giving self-service to the business. The problem with it is when it gets complicated, they struggle to understand how to solve those problems.
We are just talking about ML, ML.NET, but I'm fond of asking some questions about .NET, future of .NET, because I am not an expert with futurism. artificial prediction with something, because 5 years ago I was developing mobile application, and I said, okay, I was developing iOS and Android apps, and I said, oh, it's just a bubble. It will be it isn't going to be a good I don't know, development path for a cool man. I need to go to an appropriate enterprise. Now I see iOS developers sellers understand that I am very
I have many friends are iOS developers, and they earn very good money.
Yeah, that's why I've noticed I don't need to express some predictions about technology, because I'm a very awful predictor. Anyway, I see that a lot of in the last year, I've noticed that a lot of interesting projects in .NET has started developing, and it seems that .NET is going to be rise again. Yeah, and so what do you think? Is it true?
Yeah, I think you are, because even in the industry, I mean, if we take the financial market, specifically investment banks, commodity trading, brokerages, these kind of companies, they've had .NET implemented for a very long time. And a lot of those companies, they moved to Angular and web technology. And it was like the coolest thing in the world. And a lot of those projects have failed, I would say, or not done so well.
Do you think because of
Potentially. Yes, and a bit of React as well, I would say, somewhere in the middle of that, yeah.
what's wrong with React?
No, React is good. There are, obviously, with Angular, you get the full menu. With the React, it says, what would you like from the menu?
Yeah, I have one question. Why in every release of our podcast we are talking about front ends?
This is a very good point. Sorry, I'll go back to it. One of the things, and we have this with any programming language, is there's a curve. There's a time when it's very popular. It goes along for a while and then it drops.
Yeah.
Take any language, this is always the case with this. I think for .NET, it's taking a resurgence because of the cloud technology like Azure. They understand the markets much more. They have a lot more client involvement. I know many companies that have got an account manager with Microsoft, but not an account manager with Amazon or with Java. And so they've built that business relationship. And finally, just to say is that we're now building applications where we say the software that we run can run on any programming language. So we don't have to make that decision.
Yeah, good point. And I have a very strange question, because I'm a curious person. If I understand correctly, you are from UK, yes? And in Russia we have a special people market. I mean, employees market. A lot of outsourcing, a lot of companies that requires full stack capabilities of a developer. And what about UK? I mean, if I want to relocate to UK, what should I expect from employees market on UK?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I've been hiring or doing interviews for a lot of people from Russia, and my observation.
I'm sorry for interrupting. And if I understand correctly, you are hiring guys from one outsourcing company.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I have to be careful how I phrase that.
Don't worry, it's not a problem. I just don't like saying this company.
I will not say. What I've noticed is that typically the types of people that we interview are a lot different in their skill sets. So you mentioned outsourcing. There are other things as well, let's say. The style of programming is very different. Now, when we look at the UK, we have an expectation that they have a certain level of skill and quality. And the money in the UK is a lot higher. And the difficult thing with any particular situation is when there's a lot more money involved, everyone is more competitive. And when you get more competitive, people are trying to be smarter and better. And so suddenly we have the problem where everyone's very smart.
Yeah.
How do you make this decision about all the people? I've got 10 people that are really good. It's very hard, but we find that's the difference in the hiring process, is that there's that competition there. But the other side of it as well is that we see that developers in the UK are very industry focused. So they're very good at trading, like Chris and I have talked about, and we dedicate most of our years into there. Or they're very much, hospital, government, anything.
It's unexpected because usually we are trying to discuss technical things, and I would say if someone go to .NET meetup or in St. Pete, in Moscow, in every city in Russia, and say, okay, today I'm going to express my experience working with financial market. He said, okay, it's not so important. Come on, we are strong technical guys. So you have different approach, yeah.
Yes, yeah, we do, and also the other thing as well is that it's much more a contractor-driven market. So typically, for this company and other companies, we have 80% of our companies are made of contractors, and that skill set level is a lot different in that sense. Yeah, I'd agree. Yeah.
So contractor market, it means that it's not a regular employees.
Yes, that's right. So they have their own private company, and how can I do this? I have to be careful what I say here. They have their own company, but we use their service. I have to be very careful how I say.
Yeah, I understand. Oh, it's clever, I would say. Okay, so what would you suggest to our listeners if they are going to relocate to UK as a developers? It doesn't matter how they are going to relocate. What should we learn for it? Okay, domain. Learn some domain, financial, and what's more?
Yeah. So if you're just after, this is the truth. If you're after money, the salaries that pay the most is the financial market, and maybe 30 to 40% higher than other industries by far. So if you're just after that, I would suggest learning about financial markets. There's subjects.
And financial market is quite a wide area. For example, I'm working on the private capital market. There are a lot of guys who are just fond of trading. Some guys there are a lot of things. My friend had an experience on high definition trading. Huh?
High frequency.
Yeah, high frequency trading. And what type of financial market? What kind of area of financial market should we learn?
So I think when you're looking at the core market, there are a couple of things that are really useful. So one STP is very important. It stands for straight through processing. Learn that. That's critical, because what that enables you to do is to look at the trade life cycle. So that's what decisions do I make to buy that? I've bought it. How do I process it? And if you understand the trade life cycle, then you can apply that to any financial institution.
Okay, cool. It doesn't mean that reading Holonomica isn't enough.
Yes, so you can as well.
There is a book in Russia, like Hooligan Economics, that's with jokes, and it's very popular, and I would say it's really not enough. Okay. One more question, and let's move to some technology. You can notice that I have a very bad English. My English is not well, and for example, if a regular developer want to relocate to UK, should he focus on improving his English to I don't know, near native level, or just a regular intermediate, technical intermediate would be enough?
Great question again. So we typically we expect some level of English. just for communication. That's really important. You can be an expert, but I think that comes with time. I think, especially in London, where I'm from and where I work, there are many, many different cultures and people that understand the language at different levels, and we're very open and honest about supportability of that. There's no thing. So to answer your question, intermediate is okay.
Okay, cool. I just want about language, some personal question. Just 2 weeks ago, I watched a video from Prince Gary after his marriage, and I've noticed that I can't understand him. And how is it possible to use such a difficult to understand language if you are Prince? I mean, you have a it's easy to understand for me to you, and the majority of English guys. And how is it possible to have such a strange accent, strange language approach if you are Prince?
It's true. I think the most famous one was, I don't know if you heard, the Queen was told that she talks too difficultly, and she said, I like the Kirk. and not that thinking. The Coca-Cola is what they thought. But she was actually saying, I like cake that I eat. This is the problem with the language, in the sense of finding the right type of people if you are going to learn about the English language. I think the royals are too far one way. They're very high level. Thank you for saying that I'm understandable to. Thank you. That's very, very kind of you. I would probably say it's because I come from 4 different regions in my life. I was born in America as well. You can tell from my American accent, of course. Anyway. I think in London specifically, you learn a commonality of a way to talk.
Sorry.
So the question was...
Oh, gosh.
Prince Harry is really hard to hear.
Sorry?
Prince Harry is very difficult to understand what he's saying.
I missed that.
Prince Harry is very hard to understand what he's saying. I know.
Oh, is it?
However...
I don't have that many conversations with him.
When he does announcements on the TV rather than chats.
Yeah.
I mean, I swing by from time to time.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Other than that. But no. And so, for us, we're more understandable to talk to listen to. So, why is that? The background being, if you were to come to the UK as a developer and you're trying to learn the language,
I think, in honesty, the people's dialect and language just changes based on their background. But in London, it's quite multicultural, and everyone's English kind of gets blended into one thing. Actually,
yes.
It kind of becomes more equal in that sense.
It's true.
But there are people in the office with. Actually, I don't think there is anyone with a Prince Harry kind of.
No more. No one else speaks like that at all.
No. But I don't know how many Etonians there are knocking around in the office.
The only person I can think of is Cash. I won't say who his first name is.
I can see that. Actually.
But otherwise, no.
But the UK is actually quite broad with accents, because we've got, say, Scottish accent, which is, if you go Glasgow or Edinburgh, and then you've got
11.
I missed that. and then you got your Scouse, your Liverpudlian accent. You got the Welsh accents as well, when you got Northern and Southern in there. You've got your Newcastle accents. You got your Brummy accent. You got your typical London kind of accents. You got your West Country accent. I don't know. How did we end up without such an accent?
I know, it's so varied. And is this the case in Russia as well, that the accent?
It's Russia is kind of special because of kind of Stalin. Not exactly Stalin, but in the early Soviet, there was some how to say some idea of making one common language for everyone, and this common approach was applied to all Russia country, and it's really for modern linguist scientists. It's really hard to find appropriate experts of languages that were widespread 100 years, 200 years ago. That's why in Russia is special because we have one language, one super language from Moscow and St. Pete with some differences, and other cases are trying to do the same. Because as far as I know, in Italy, there's no way to. If you go to I don't know, Neapoli, and say, okay, guys, you are not talking in Italian. They say, come on, we are not Italian.
My wife is Italian.
Yeah.
I go to Napoli or Naples.
Napoli, yeah.
Napoli, Italia, on Friday next week, and it's true. Yeah. Also, the Sud and the North, the South and the North is a big problem, and we have the same in England with the same thing. But it's interesting to hear in Russia where they have the common. This is make life easy. Right?
It would make life quite easy. Yeah.
Because I guess when you're learning Russian, you have one way of saying it, I guess. Or
so my son actually says yes in different ways to how I say yes.
You say the yes, yeah. So
he's more yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, where did that come from?
From Germany, I suppose.
It's kind of a posh English.
To say it in that way is very posh.
Yeah, very posh.
You're always like, oh yes, I'm better than you. Yes, of course, yeah.
Okay, and for Germany, if I understand correctly, you are working tightly with German guys, yes? Yeah. And okay, let's.
The thing is, like, the company has lots of different offices, and some of those are in Germany. And we're integrating, so some of us have more interactions with our German colleagues than others.
Yes.
In my role, I don't have that many interactions. I think I've got Stefan, but other than that,
I have probably interactions with the software architects out in Germany, but otherwise not as much. I will do in about 6 months.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Okay, let's try to go back to technology. Okay, let's go back to technology and beer.
Do you have like many phrases to explain something, or?
What do you mean?
So I just use the phrase "the lion's share," and that means he will have more than me. He will have the lion's share.
It's. I don't know this.
Like a butterfly in the stomach, something like this.
Butterfly in the stomach, yeah, kind of like that kind of phrase.
Common phrase for usual situations.
Yes.
I don't. Yes, of course we have some. Yep.
So that is actually one of the things that we have to be really careful of, because we use lots of local English phrases like the lion's share. And we find that our colleagues here in St. Petersburg, they don't understand those kind of colloquialisms.
Yeah.
It's a real challenge, actually. We have to remember we have to remember not to use them.
Yeah, actually, it's absolutely true. My wife is subscribed on. I was forget it's everyday email subscription with English phrases of the day, and there's no way to learn it because it's extremely. It seems that you really use it every time some of these phrases.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah. In fact, I can have many conversations just using these phrases to explain the situation without actually having a.
For example, do you have some cheat sheet? Do you use some cheat sheets if you go to I don't know another company or another type of site of city?
Yeah, I guess so. Like
Cheat sheets. The trouble is, I think it becomes more local because you end up. So you've got your English colloquialisms, and then you actually have your internal company ones, which are based on kind of situations that have happened.
Yeah, okay, I go with that. Yeah, that makes sense.
Hegnado.
Yes, yeah.
And outside of our company, that means nothing.
Nothing means anything. Yeah, that's true. That's
but we know what we're talking about.
See, Chris and I have worked at 2 companies together. So this one and the one before. And so we have an understanding of 2 different companies' internal operations, let's say. Is it fair to say?
Internal language.
Internal language, sure. And
but that's what makes working fun as well. I mean, in every environment, in your environment, you've got your different experiences, and they're kind of related to that environment. So you may have a phrase or something happened with somebody's sandwich and whatever else. It's just a relatable experience that then transfers its meaning.
Yeah, I would say. Yeah, I agree with that.
So, was this a technology podcast?
Okay, technology of. Okay, one more. What?
Definitely diverted.
It's like Java and .NET. I thought was fantastic as a question.
It's a really difficult one because it's got. Do I think about Java?
I used to be a Java developer before.
I never was.
So I did about 5 or 6 years of Java. To be fair, that mainly through university. So I don't know how much that qualifies as commercial experience.
No.
Okay, fine.
No.
I did 1 year as a Java developer then, in that case.
Okay, that qualifies.
And I remember using a tool that's called JSwing. This is about 15 years ago. And JSwing, the best thing about it was you could draw a box on the screen using a pad, and it would write the Java code for you. And you were like, this is advanced, this is amazing. And now we talk about programs that are teaching other programs how to learn. This is a concept that's different.
If I understand correctly, this technology have XML under the hood.
XML.
Yeah. Everything comes out as XML.
I lost a point in my. I got a distinction for my masters. I lost 1 point because I believe that XML databases were the future. I don't know if you've ever seen this. Yeah. Because XML was cool. Someone had come up with a technology that could make XML data cool.
How'd you query that?
Horribly. It's like I got asked a similar question by my professor, and he kind of went, "Okay, so I've got like this really horrible thing. How do you query it?" And it's just like with a lot of effort. It's very difficult.
I need lots of compute.
Yeah, but interestingly enough, when you look at Mongo and you look at like it's got a JSON format, right? It's a similar concept. I mean, JSON obviously is better than XML in many ways, but they've kind of done it well with the JSON side. I think it's been quite interesting.
As for JSON, I would say, okay, it's nice, but if you want to validate your JSON, you use JSON schema. Okay, if you want to transform JSON, you use, I forget what's the name of this technology that uses JSON to make transformation to JSON. So the thing is that we're trying to make to apply XML approach to JSON.
Pretty much, yeah.
It's like there is a meme from Star Wars Episode 3. I forget what's the full description. Okay, technology. Yeah, we are talking about technology. We are talking about clouds. We've got a good discussion after meetup about cloud. What should we use? Public cloud, private cloud, or hybrid cloud? Hybrid cloud. Yeah, hybrid cloud. So, guys, what should we use?
I think officially, I would say choose the right technology for the right problem. Officially.
Cheater.
I think if we look at things, it's like, well, we had mainframes to start, and we went, we don't like mainframes. We're gonna actually farm everything out into individual PCs, as they were called back then.
They were.
So you're farming out your compute, and now we're kind of swinging back to more central computing, but virtualized in the cloud. But that costs lots of money. So I think in the end, he's going to find out that it's cheaper to do some things on-prem, and then you want to do the things that actually make a difference and make you money in the cloud, because I think that's going to end up hybrid for that reason.
I would say so. Also, one of the things that we find quite challenging, especially in the trading markets, is there's regulations on where the data is transmitted and stored that have an impact on us. So, for example, any trade that's done within Europe, the data cannot leave Europe at all. So when you're thinking,
It's the same in Russia.
it's the same in Russia, right?
Yeah.
And so the problem we have is that when you hear about cloud like Azure says, well, we can store your data in 10 different locations and back up the data, and you say, well, yeah, but none of them can be outside of Europe, because if they are, then we get a fine, a very big fine for moving that data. So I think what happens is that the regulation and the risk involved in that pushes the business to have a hybrid approach, because it's quite complex.
I'm not sure. I know it's complex.
Yeah.
But actually, I think it actually comes down to having good architects. And it really does. You have to understand what you're creating. And there are solutions out there with geolocation, kind of aware.
How do you tell Microsoft not to put their data through a non-European area?
Well, it's up to you as an implementer to say, like, if you got like Mongo, for example, you can say where you want your data in for different types of data in different regions, different countries. But you need to do it yourself. I mean, you can't rely on somebody else to do it for you. You've got to do it.
You do.
And that takes experience and actually some nous. Oh no, these are another one English things, nous. to think about it. So, in terms of data residency, I don't think that really has a cloud, no cloud. It's not a blocker for trading in some ways.
That's true.
Because you can get around it. But the stuff that's on-prem is the low-value stuff. It's like your documents, your this, your that, your file shares. You're never going to put that in the cloud. Why would you?
Yeah, if you put every employee's personal data in the cloud.
Yeah, like a payroll system.
Almost like a payroll system.
Yeah, no one would do that.
No one would ever do that. So that would be bad. So there are certain types of data. Obviously, GDPR is another challenge in itself.
Oh yeah.
In my view, there's a lot of challenges. I think obviously one could argue about, from an architectural perspective, I totally agree. If you think through the way in which your non-off-premise cloud presence is, I think it's certainly viable in that sense that you'd be able to put everything up on there. But quite rightly, as Chris says, and I agree, is there are just some things you don't want to put up there. why would I want to have my SharePoint, which typically is an intranet system, on the cloud? Now, there might be reasons why you want to happen there, totally, but the point is that not everything needs to be in the cloud for the sake of being on the cloud. And I think traditionally we've never done that before. So, cloud is immature in the sense of it's been around for a while, but it's not been there forever. And so I think that there's a journey to be had on that.
Yeah, it's a learning curve basically. Everyone's learning, and I think people are going to generate the experience and weigh up those decisions. Everyone needs to look at the requirements. It really is one of those things. You need to look at the requirements and actually do the evaluation of what actually fits. And being open to look at different things. Don't just rely on what you know, because what you know might not include the other 10 million things. 10 million is probably too big, but 10 things out there which could do the job equally well in a cloud or on-prem scenario.
Exactly. I mean, you were talking about earlier on was a serverless stack. There you go. There's a lot of S's there. That just isn't available on premise these days. It's a new thinking, it's a new approach. I mean, arguably there are some software solutions historically, but I think it's about choosing the right solution to the right problem, which I know is very generic to say, but
Education.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
I just want to say that I listen to a lot of measures that, cloud and only cloud. And some architects that I know usually say serverless or not only serverless. And from my point of view, it's weird. Saying, serverless, we're applying serverless for everything, it's a little bit weird and not professional. Especially because of payment. I mean, I mentioned that in our project we calculated we have some little serverless, little Lambda services, and it's anyway cost result billing of our lambdas doesn't allow us be satisfied with this result. It's almost 20% of all billing costs. So it means that Lambda, it's not a cheap version. It's not. And I thought about one interesting thing. What do you think about performance optimization? About performance optimization for serverless calculation. I mean, usually we care about performance only if it affects usability. Our request should be processed during 300 milliseconds. It's if less doesn't matter. But on serverless, we pay for minutes, for millisecond, for memory, and if we are able to write a high-performance code that uses some high-performance tricks, maybe it will be cost-effective. We spend more money developing, more programming time, but we will save more money while executing this serverless application. What do you think about it? Can we consider it as a revolution of development approach?
I've got bad news. You're going to have to rethink your approach. And the reason it's not your approach, it's the idea. So I think we as developers have been led down the convenience path. We do things, we do them easy. We're quite lazy, actually. We need to do a task. We'll get the task done. We have a PBI and the outcome is set. So we've been in that mindset for a number of years. Okay, but with cloud it changes. Our mindset has to change, because not only do we have to achieve the result, we have to meet the requirements, we have to start thinking about cost. So cost doesn't really, how do you drive down cost? You keep going, so there's no stop on that. So, but the key thing is, you got to think about how you program something. Is it efficient code? Is it efficient use of memory? Is it efficient use of CPU cycles? Okay, and it's down to the individual task that you've been asked to achieve. What is that requirement? How do you do it efficiently? Okay, and it's a different mindset. You can do things lazily and achieve the result, but now you're going to be asked to work smarter to write things, to deliver things which are lower cost to run. And that's the thing, lower cost of operation. It is going to be a shift, because computers being cheap because it's been on-prem, but now it's going to be in the cloud. Computers going to be more expensive, so you're going to drive the improvements. Now I can see us being in a place where people have goals and objectives, and businesses have goals and objectives, they already do, businesses do, about driving down costs. So we're going to be asked to write things to run more efficiently.
Yeah, and as for this reducing costs, it's absolutely right. You're absolutely right. It's usually a main driver of a business. And for example, there is a good feature of .NET Core. It's Intel 6 high-level support of Intel 6, when you can write very code that uses some CPU instructions that are special for some processors. And what do you think? Using these intrinsics to increase your performance from, for example, 100 milliseconds to 50 milliseconds. Usually, is it worth increasing maintainability of your code, increasing cost of your code, but decreasing cost of processing this application?
Fantastic question. I mean, one of the things when we ask the business, we say to them, well, typically they tell us, but let's say we ask them, we normally say, how fast do you need it to run, or what's the frequency? And they normally say light speed. Yeah. How fast do you want your car to go? Well, I'm not going to say slow. I'm going to say fast, right? And the challenge there is that you really got to look at the cost of it's the cost of the improvement to make it faster, or the performance, let's say.
Opportunity cost.
The opportunity cost. So typically what we have is to get it from 1 second to 100th of a second. You have to prove, first of all, the value of it. What value do I get from doing that? If it's going to take me 6 months to a year to get down to that point, but actually when I finished the work, they went, yeah, thank you, we don't need it, but thank you, it sounded good at the time, then obviously it's not valuable. Maybe some of the examples Chris has given tonight from his presentation, yeah, there definitely is. There are strategies, there's market opportunities, there's a lot of stuff out there. It's definitely possible. But when we're actually if we're in a real business environment, if we're actually taking a piece of work on, we are genuinely looking at what is the value of improving performance. And we want to measure that. And for us, we specify, or the name we call it, as non-functional requirement.
Yeah.
NFR.
I would say you mentioned that you mentioned architects, and actually architects usually should care about quality attributes and constraints and actually enforce equality attributes and constraints. And so, okay, in Газпром, do you have architects who just analyzing some processes? Okay, well, these quality attributes should be considered as ACER, architecture significant requirements, all other stuff. Let's get rid of this. Should developers will care about it? Do you have something like this?
So we work in different departments, let's say, so there are different focuses on the technology. What I can say probably for the area I work in is that we certainly, our architects are looking at all parts of the system from the beginning of the journey all the way through. Some are challenging, some are not. I'm trying to be as generic as I can.
I think where I appreciate an architect is they've got a great high-level view of technology, but they do look at business process. And as a developer, when I have my developer hat on, business process is really tricky. There are some architects that have been set challenges purely around business process. Like, what significantly happens with a business? Does a business make an acquisition? Okay, how do the systems of the acquired company change? Are they brought in line with our systems, or does the converse, the opposite,
user commit?
You separate. Okay, how do you separate? What do the business processes need to change? Business process is really difficult. And from an architectural perspective, we've got business analysts, but from an architecture perspective, data flowing from here, decoupling of systems. Can either system actually continue to operate? It's really, really tricky. So I think it's really important to look at stuff from a technology perspective, but where architects come in as well, they often have a business process perspective, and it's often forgotten actually.
It is,
and it's really valuable.
Even sometimes I forget that as well, to be fair, because you have this weird thing that happens, which is, as a software developer or as a lead, architects are sometimes really good. And sometimes they're like this really annoying person that keeps trying to interfere with my project, and why does he not understand that I want to use this cool technology? And
I just want to add, that from my side, architects usually the guys who fond of asking questions. And you usually don't know how to answer these questions. Because
I'd actually like to offer up another view.
I know you're going to do that. This is why I'm painting the picture. But I'm going to go round full circle, which is to say that I do also appreciate the value of the architects, because I had a recent project. I probably shouldn't name it for now, but I've got a recent, and without having the architects involved, we wouldn't, as a project, have been able to appreciate or understand the dynamics of the solution. And that means to say is that the business would not get the value of the software application that we're potentially going to provide to them without an architect. It's this balance, I think.
There is a balance. That high level view of have you considered
have you
this?
Thought about this? Yeah, exactly.
But in Газпром marketing and trading, actually, I think the architects respect as well.
Quite cool. I have
They're
to say,
very respectful.
Really good.
So
this company.
they know when they need to get involved, and they know when to do a little bit of steering. So if you've got a good idea and you want to run with it, and they think it's a good idea, they'll let you run with it. Why? They're not going to stop the party. They're just going to let things happen.
Right.
It means less work for them because they think it's a good idea. Okay, and people are encouraged to have your ideas. You're encouraged to to move along on your own and bring other people with you. But they're a great sounding board. So if you want to have a conversation and as a developer and go, I want to do X, Y, Z, and they'll probably go, yeah, good idea. Or if they don't think it's a good idea, they'll just say, I don't think it's a good idea. But what they'll do is they'll say why it's not a good idea. And that's really crucial.
Very good. Yeah, I'd agree with this. Yeah, I'd agree with that. And it's so important, the why in these situations, because we're humans, we have emotions, and if I've come up with this amazing thing and I've got a person that's bigger than me, in terms of, maybe bigger
Hang on,
than me.
you're 7 feet tall.
These architects are normally how tall is an ivory tower?
I'm not sure. Reaches the stars, the clouds.
Reaches the stars. So normally architects are a million miles away in terms of heights. But no, so yeah, I can only think of ivory towers at the moment. They have their place. Is the point?
Definitely.
Sorry guys, my laptop is run out of battery. Yeah.
And we've continued talking.
Yeah.
More privilege this time's gone on, but it's been good. I think we've done well.
You've done well on the show there.
Yeah. So maybe you should say something to our listeners, maybe some advice or invitation to job interview to Газпром and to UK or stuff like that.
Yeah, for myself, I would say, obviously we're hiring. It's a great time to come to us, mainly because we're at the point where we're actually going to explode in terms of trying lots of new technology, and we want to try and bring people onto the journey. Advice to developers, just keep learning. This day and age, there's so much technology out there. There are so many things to learn. I hope you find the right things to learn that are valuable to your career as well as your experiences.
Solid principles.
Okay, thank you. That was .NET&More Drinkcast, yet another experimental release. Thank you and goodbye.